number one reason that most people don't travel is they're afraid of what people are going to think of them, which I think is really sad
Yeah.
because you have as much right to be out there as anybody else. So they're scared about what people are going to think about them as parents and their child, if they have a sensory overload.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole section in the book about how parents deal with that.
I am so excited to have you here today, Dawn. Welcome to Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Let's start with your background and tell us how you came to write about special needs travel tips.
Well, I've been a travel trade reporter for about 34 years on and off. I've written for 4 major travel trades, and I've done a lot of freelance writing as well. When I needed this book back in the early 2000s, it didn't exist. And I thought, there really should be a book about for traveling with kids who have either special needs or anxious or inflexible, because all of us, all of our children as well, are anxious and inflexible when they're out of their comfort zone. And what could make you more out of your comfort zone than travel? So I started interviewing then. I spoke to Dr. Tony Atwood, who's very big in ASD. I spoke to Dr. Ellen Littman, who's really big in ADHD, especially with girls. And then I kind of hit a wall because I didn't have anybody else to interview. And it wasn't until a group called IBCCES created a designation called the Certified Autism Travel Professional designation that I knew exactly how I could write the book, because so many of those travel professionals are special needs parents themselves. And so they were very gracious. I interviewed tons of them, and they introduced me to their clients who are also special needs parents. And there was so much more information on the internet in 2019 compared to 2000. And then I got a 2-year break with a pandemic at home, which left me plenty of room to finally write the book. It was supposed to be my first book. It ended up being my 8th book.
Wow. That's awesome. Your 8th book.
Yeah.
What an accomplishment, because we were just visiting before we started, and I just shared that Joseph and I have just released our first book, and I'm just in my mind, just that whole process. So congratulations
Yeah.
on 8 books.
Well, the other ones are fiction, so totally different whole process.
Yes, different process, but yet still what an accomplishment.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
saying, I think, wow, that's awesome. So let's talk about your upcoming book, Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. I love that title. It really covers a lot there. So you already mentioned you were inspired by need, but what really inspired you? Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? And let's talk about this awesome book you wrote.
I've been traveling my whole life. I was the daughter of 2 people who owned a major travel agency in Manhattan, one of the largest at the time. And then they developed a secondary, well, a subset that dealt with short-term apartment rentals in Europe way before Airbnb existed. So we were really at the infancy of this. And I handled administration and marketing and sales. And then I had children. And I write this in the beginning of the book too, in the preface. I had children and things changed because my children weren't as interested in traveling as I was, and they certainly didn't do it as smoothly as I did. And so I was not going to stop traveling. All I can say is I wish I'd had this book
Yeah.
because I did it all wrong. I did it all wrong. And as I was interviewing, I interviewed about 100 people for this book. It's not my story, it's their story. And as I was interviewing them, I thought, wow, I wish I'd done that. That would have been a really good idea. So, all the things I talk about, starting small, introducing the concept of travel, having a child centric vacation. Yeah, I didn't do any of that, but I would do it now if I could.
Yes, yes. I needed this book also my son, who is on the autistic spectrum, he just turned 30. Well, I, for the first part of our autism journey, we didn't go anywhere because it was so stressful. It was so hard on him too, not just his father and I, but on Joseph. And so, you have so many challenges. And I was just, curious, as you interviewed, what you learned about the most common challenges and what, obstacles parents face with their special needs kids.
Yeah, great question. So, number one reason that most people don't travel is they're afraid of what people are going to think of them, which I think is really sad
Yeah.
because you have as much right to be out there as anybody else. So, they're scared about what people are going to think about them as parents and their child if they have a sensory overload.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole section in the book about how parents deal with that. And basically the number one thing is to pay attention to your child, because your child is all you need to focus on. And so you know how to calm your child. You'll take them to a quiet area and you'll do whatever you normally do. Whether it's giving them a snack, a quieter place, talking to them, whatever works. But not to spend time worrying about what anybody thinks. There was actually a study done by IBCCES. They interviewed 1,000 special needs parents and found that 87% don't travel, but of those, 93% would if they knew where to go and what to do. So that was an inspiration for the book, because I'd like to open up the world for people. Children deserve to be global citizens and they deserve to see a world outside of their own.
Oh, yes. I agree 100% with you.
Yeah. So to answer the question of what are the other common challenges, I would say that 85% of the book are strategies for traveling, not necessarily where to go, but how to go anywhere and take care of sensory overload and any other issues. New sensations. You have to bring your noise canceling headphones. You have to bring dark glasses. You have to be prepare. So a large part of the book is thinking about the travel from leaving your house to coming back, and where are the issues going to be in each aspect of the trip, and creating different strategies and backup plans for each. And so starting small is really important. How are you going to introduce the concept of travel to a child? And that's really important now, because I think a lot of people haven't been out for like 2 years. So they may have children who are 3 who have never traveled and don't know what this is like. So what do? Picture books with their favorite characters, exploring different aspects of travel. I list a lot of those. Your librarian can give you far more. Videos are everywhere, either provided on YouTube or by the supplier of whatever travel you're going to do. That's a great way to experience and preview what's going to happen. Role play, social stories, which I imagine you've spoken about on this program before. Social stories are really big.
Yeah.
And then what I call mini experiences. So before you take a big vacation, take a little vacation. So you're not going to get on a 10-hour flight before you take a 1-hour flight. But what you're also going to do is seek out opportunities like Wings for Autism offer, where you can go to the airport and they'll do a whole tour of the airport from beginning to, arrival to when you're going to board. So you can experience what going through security is like, and TSA. There is a program called TSA Cares, where somebody will meet you at the airport and sort of shadow you and guide you through and be there for you throughout the experience with your child. There are certain airports that have sensory rooms for you, so I list those. There are airlines that will give you tours, so that helps with the air part. There, I list short car rides before long ones, a commuter train ride before a long train ride. Cruises come in all different lengths. You could have a 2-day cruise before you take a 2-week cruise, but also, instead of a hotel stay where you could spend a lot of money on a long hotel stay, why don't you go to a neighbor's house or a friend's house or a relative's house for the night and see where the triggers are going to be. The child gets to experience what it's like to be out of their comfort zone and sleeping in a room that's not their own. But you'll see right away where the triggers are. Do you need to bring the sheets and blankets from home? Do you need to bring the toiletries from home? Do you need to bring their a fan to drown out noise from the hallway? Do you need to bring their favorite lamp or their favorite toys? It's really good to have these mini experiences. Even camping, put a tent out in your backyard and do it for a night before you get an RV and you go cross country.
Yeah, those are really great tips. And I love that, starting out small and really paying attention to what your child's triggers are. I know as you were speaking and giving all this great information and tips and ways to handle it, I was thinking, wow, I really could have used this when Joseph flew for the first time.
Yeah.
He was not having it. But the beautiful thing is once they can experience something, then it gets easier and easier. At least it did with my son. So if we can practice it exactly with what you're saying, with those small steps, and build and offer them that transition time and build a travel toolbox is what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, you're creating a frame of reference so that after you've taken this 1-day trip or this one night stay, you say, remember, this is like a hotel stay. So when you book the longer trip, you say, remember how successful that last trip was? And
Yeah.
it's creating the predictability that children crave, especially children on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough. And I honestly, I think my neurotypical son could have used this as well, small steps and getting to experience things. He didn't have the challenges that my oldest son with ASD has, but certainly, there's fears, there's the unknown, planes are loud, what is happening?
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is great. I'm just curious. I'm just curious with all these parents that you interviewed. Was there one common challenge amongst us that really came up more often than not?
I'm thinking, I mean, other
Yeah.
than having to deal with onlookers that can be insensitive, you know, I don't, everybody had issues where they needed noise canceling headphones, or they needed fidget toys, or they needed to just have a quiet place to go
Mhm.
to talk. Just the preparations are important. I
Yes.
think that they found that creating a child-centric vacation really helped them. And
Yeah.
that's building a trip that's pacing was really something that came up again and again, that you can't jam 5 and 6 different things into a day, even though that's what we did before we had kids. One or two things, even if, you have to leave the theme park and you've paid, go back the next day,
Mhm.
because your child has to enjoy it. So they're going to enjoy that afternoon by the pool, even
Yeah.
though you think they're going to love the happiest place on earth where everybody is, melting down. Sorry, but you see a lot of meltdowns at places like that. More and more theme parks are becoming certified autism centers and having the training to deal with people on the spectrum and with invisible disabilities, whether it's signage or maps that show you the quieter places, or they've had extensive training for their staff. All those are listed. You're seeing more and more autism-friendly destinations as well. But I also recommend taking advantage of children's special passions. So with a child on the spectrum, I'm sure you had this, where they have a special interest or ongoing different special interest, and they want to spend all their time talking and reading about that. I mean, it's a real gift. These are the people who become
Yes.
experts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So why not take advantage of that? And in the book, I thought of as many of these special interests as I could. And I broke them down by state and by city and talk about the museums and events that cater to those special interests.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's how you make the mundane parts of a vacation bearable, because they get to look forward to the trip to the mustard museum or the grain elevator museum or whatever else, trolley cars and trains and insects and all of that. Dinosaur museums, they're all there, and information on how to find, 600 more. And why not really cultivate your child's interest, because that's going to be a bonding experience.
I love that. Yes, because I do think that, without having much of a toolkit, I will say, especially all those years ago, really, Joseph, once he got to the place of interest, it was all great from that point on. So I love that. And I think any parents who are starting out and on this, whatever journey you're on, I personally on the autism journey, wherever your child is, this is really, really going to help. And I'm going to recommend this book because I deal with a lot of families, and the travel is so important, but it is so scary to jump out there and do this with your kids. I know.
And it doesn't have to be the really expensive stuff either. I have information on car trips and how to make car trips more bearable, how to deal with restaurants, how to choose a campground. So, and then resorts that do cater to both family, parents and their children, places like beaches, have kids clubs where everybody's specially trained. So the child could spend the day there, and you might spend the day by the pool or doing whatever you want with your partner and having some private time. And there are, the 5 major cruise lines as well have special training, special offerings. And there's a company called Autism on the Seas that puts together group packages so families can meet other families that have similar experiences. And I think that's really special too.
I love that. I love that because you gain your own support there along. And what a great thing, because so often I think families who have kids that have special needs, they just you feel lonely and isolated. And I just absolutely love that idea. That is so wonderful. We were talking about, or I had brought up, I have 2 sons, one who is neurotypical and one who is neurodiverse. And so with both of these, right, kids who are very different, learn very different, observe and are going to have a completely different experience when you travel. How do we accommodate both?
The interesting thing I found was that the special needs tips really help the neurotypical children as well, because how could they not? We think, oh, we're going to tell you, we're going to surprise you with a vacation and we're just going to spring it on you and you'll find all this stuff exciting. And they're not finding it exciting. They wanted to know what was going to happen. So I don't see where you could really hurt yourself by, explaining everything. But there are also vacations that will cater to neurotypical interests as well. Take sports vacations. So taking a child to a dude ranch where the neurodiverse child might really benefit from being around horses, because they can sort of communicate with the horses and not have to deal with social issues, because the horse is not going to argue with them or tell them what to do. Nice, quiet. But the neurotypical child might like to ride as well. Also, you've got golf. You've got skiing, you've got scuba. These are all therapeutic. I list different places that will cater to these interests and teach children on the spectrum, but plenty of neurotypical children would love to do this too. So bonding experience for everybody.
Yeah, I love that too, because when you have, 2 very different children, I guess what I'm hearing, and I have seen this firsthand through my experience with both of my sons, is they're still children. And I agree. I think everyone could benefit from the preparation, and this is what we're going to do. This is what it might look like, and include the whole family in this transition and the social stories and really getting prepared for the trip. And, you know, I can remember having such a high expectation and thinking, oh, I'd be so excited. We're going to this and this. And then it would just go nothing like I had planned. Because again, I didn't have these wonderful tools and tips, and the world was different. But what is a successful trip? I don't even know if there is such a thing, but what do you think that looks like, and what can we do to help make that happen in our world as parents?
Well, other than the preparation, which is so important, and building the trip around what the child's needs are, I think staying flexible because things will change. I think keeping children safe, whether that means sewing a GPS into their clothing or taking pictures of them in the morning in whatever clothing they're wearing in case they take off, you can find them. Um, I think it's what they're going to remember. You know, growing up, it's the things you don't expect that are going to be successful. Like I've had trips where I've just read the whole time. That was a successful trip for me because I had quiet and I could just read. So I think you have to always check in with your child and gauge how they're enjoying the trip and realize this is going to be trial and error. And this just trip might not work out, but the next trip will because of what you learned from this one. It's not like one shot and that's it. But I think you have to, a lot of people said, check in, constantly check in and see how they're dealing with the sensory issues. And this is their trip. So make sure that they understand, like get their buy-in. They should have the choice of where you're going. I mean, give them 3 choices that have all been approved by you. So they have buy-in. Let them choose what clothing they want to bring or what they want to do each day. Maybe 3 choices. Again, no wrong answers because you've approved them all. Get their buy-in. And the same goes with pacing. You really have to check in with them. A lot of parents wrote or said to me, I can't tell you how many pictures we have of our 9-year-old on our back carrying them around the theme park because they were just exhausted or they fell asleep at the lunch table because we've just run them ragged because of everything we thought they wanted to do.
Yes.
And all you have to do is check in. I spoke to one person who took her niece and nephew, I think, to a science museum. And this was not for the book. This was a podcaster. And she said, you know, what they wanted to do was go up and down the escalator because they'd never seen an escalator before. So they spent a lot of the trip, instead of learning about biology, going up and down on the escalator. I guarantee you, when those kids went home, they thought that was a successful trip.
Well, yes, I can remember riding the escalator up and down too when I was a kid, and I can see the fascination, and I think it's at least through my experience, I think we are hard on ourselves and we try to be superheroes. And I have to be honest that I can remember feeling like I could drop my head down and go to sleep at the table, or that I wanted someone to carry me.
Yeah. I had one mom who said, you know, we learned from experience that when we go camping, and she had one neurotypical and one neurodiverse child, that when they got there, the first day was decompression day, and all the neurotypical kid wanted to do was read that day anyway. So that's what they do. They add a day onto the trip, and that's just decompression, and they just write it off, and it starts the trip right. They don't start like with tension.
Yes, because when you just go, and go, I mean, it just starts, at least when you get that exhausted, it's not fun anyway. And I
Right.
love the pacing. I love the checking in, all the things that you write about in this book. I think it's really, really going to help a lot of families get out and do more. I think at least for ASD kids, it's so important for them. The more they can experience, the more they're going to be able to apply. So getting a book that shows you and gives you places to go and gives you tips, I think is really going to make a big difference in the child's life as well as the parents. So glad you wrote this book.
Thank you. I really do hope that it opens parents' lives up and children's lives up. And I have my email address in the book, and I really hope people will write to me and tell me what they've experienced, share their anecdotes, share what worked and what didn't. So it's sort of like a crowdsourcing experiment. Everybody can benefit. And I have a website called travelingdifferent.com, and traveling is with one L. And I'm going to be updating the book constantly and adding people's experience so everybody can learn from everybody else. And hopefully it'll turn into a second edition of the book. So people should follow that. People should follow my Twitter and Facebook feeds, where I'm always retweeting and copying different stories about new places that maybe I missed in the book, because, when the publisher said, that's it, I was like, but no, things are changing. It's very hard for me because it's got to include everything. And you can't, because there has to be a time when it goes to press. So
Yeah.
that's the only way I could deal with that. That's my issue, is with the blog.
Yes. Well, that's so good to know that you're going to continue updating, because things do change a lot.
Yeah.
And where we can go and what places have to offer. I think it just feels like a big relief to know that there is help out there and support out there, and that you can go out into the world with your kids and have a good time.
There are whole cities that are, the tourist board gets involved in getting their certification and the training, and then they get all of the hotels and restaurants and attractions in the city to do the same. So it becomes, Mesa, Arizona was the first certified autism center city, so that you can go, and everywhere you go, you're going to find it's going to be easy for you because people understand. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina got their certification from the Champion Autism Network, which is CAN. So these are really helpful tips to know, because it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yes, it does. I think this is really going to help a lot of people. So you shared where we can find you and connect with you. Can you tell us again the title of your book and where folks can go to buy your book?
Sure. It's Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. It is available now for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you order your fine books. You can get it in the hardcover, and you can pre-order the audio. You won't be able to pre-order the ebook until August 15th, when it comes out. And you'll list all my social media, I'm sure, if people want to follow or contact me. The only, in parting, please ask your library to stock it so people who can't afford it can have access to it. That would be really helpful. And when you see something labeled in the book as either CAC for Certified Autism Center or AF for Autism Friendly, really do your due diligence and check it out yourself. I've got all the contact information for every place I list, but just because something's autism friendly doesn't mean it's going to work for your particular child. So find out how they earn the designation, what it means, what they offer, and if it's being offered when you're going to be in town, because like some museums might have a sensory day, but it's a Saturday when you're not in town. So you really want to work with the book. Don't take everything as gospel, but do due diligence.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I know that, for at least through my experience, and our kids change so much too, it's really important, like what you said at the beginning, is just check in with your child, make them a part of it. And then, like you said, yes, this place does have the training, but does it have what my child needs? I think that's really important for parents to hear.
Yeah, designations change by the year, so you really want to be careful.
Yes, I agree. And we can't, or I already am excited to hear what you add because it's so helpful. I think this is great. Definitely a book that everybody needs to have and use. Thank you so much for doing all this research for us and getting all the parents' input. And you guys have all heard where we can find Dawn. And thank you, Dawn, so much for being a guest on Mother's Guide Through Autism.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.